All right, well, the Bucs were back at practice on Wednesday in preparation for their Sunday game against the New England Patriots, and man, you gotta give it to these guys over the bye week. They all got not healthy. I'm telling you, it's one thing to, a lot of teams, went through the trade deadline and didn't make any deals, including the Patriots, who they play on Sunday. But I think this was interesting. It was kind of an exercise in sort of, human emotions, but like I think there was an assumption that because they didn't make a trade, and of course Jason Light's only made one trade in his entire 12 years as being the GM. But when they did make a trade, I think there was an assumption that, well, that must mean that Chris Godwin and Bucky Irving and maybe Haason Reddick or whoever else is out there is close to coming back. We knew Luke Reddick started his 21-day practice window; they can activate him anytime. So it's like, okay, well, this they didn't make a deal, so therefore. No.
Well, and even Jalen McMillan, who when he got hurt in the preseason was kind of like, well, he'll be back hopefully after the bye week.
Next train.
So, you were kind of anticipating that or hoping that was
hoping to, yeah. He's nowhere.
Now, since then we found out that he actually fractured his neck, not just strained it.
True. Yeah, ligament damage, all that, still wearing a collar. No idea when he's going to come back. So you go out there to practice, and it's like, yeah, same team that ended went into the bye week, really, basically. So
hopefully those guys are healthier. Hopefully Baker got some rest, and everyone at this point the season's banged up a little bit, but
yeah, and I think they all benefited from the rest. There's no question. I mean, Baker said he feels a little bit better. He has kind of an abdominal strain, if you will, an oblique. He has a knee injury that's not going to be better before the season's over. But just getting away from getting beaten on every Sunday, just a week away from that or so will help you, and it helped Baker. And Baker was on there as a full participant. A lot of guys were, but the ones that we were kind of looking out for, not so much. None of them practiced, and frankly, it didn't sound like they're going to. Still don't have Reddick, still don't have Godwin, still don't have Bucky, and on and on. So this is who they have, and they're going to have to, to just ride it out, I suppose. And Bull said, they're coming along and they're getting treatment, they're training and doing a lot of stuff in the morning because we don't see them. That's the other part of it is like I've not even laid eyes on Bucky Irving. I haven't laid eyes on Jalen McMillan, or Chris Godwin. But he says, when they're out, when they're capable of doing more, they'll be at practice. Well, we haven't seen them, so they're not capable yet. Reddick, I still think that it's possible. He was limited, but it's possible that these offensive line, when they get out there, they're tough guys. I think this is a case with Wirfs, but whether Reddick's ready to play Sunday or not, I don't know. Would it shock me if he was active? No, but they do have 21 days before they have to do anything. And if they got Luke back, I think that'd be big for them. I mean, Charlie Heck has hung in there, but when you have Charlie and then you have 5 different right guards next to him, it's just not going to go well. And it really hasn't. As far as losing Reddick, well, Reddick was supposed to be that guy that was going to make a big difference in the pass rush. He only has 1.5 sacks. He has gotten some attention in terms of blocking and things like that. That's probably helped Yaya Diaby a little bit. But last week, or the last time they played against New Orleans a couple weeks ago, we saw Anthony Nelson come in there and win Defensive Player of the Year, and he had the kind of stat line that no player has had all season. With the a couple sacks, forced fumble, interception return for a touchdown. So, okay, so Nelly's going to start again. What did you lose? We really don't know. And guys like Luke Haggard came back to practice. I don't know what that means. They've had 5 different guards, including Dan Feeney, who started the last game, and we still don't know who's going to start there. But Levante David is practicing, and he had missed a lot of time. So, yeah, they benefited like any team from the bye week, but not to the point where they're going to have better or the core players that they're missing. And I think at least for another week, we'll see. And that's, to me, that's a little sobering. But you talk to Baker and it's like, I'm not surprised. He goes, it's kind of been what Jason does. I mean, Jason is not a big trade guy. Doesn't mean that they didn't look into him, didn't kick the tires on him. They simply didn't want to give up the compensation for whatever these teams were asking for. So this is your ball club, and they got to find a way to win. I still think they got to find a way to win 1 out of these next 3 if they can, because you got kind of a gauntlet here with New England, and then at Buffalo, and then at the LA Rams, but not much has changed. So um, I I don't know what else to say other than I don't have high expectations for the second half of the season if in fact they don't get anybody back, because guys are going to get hurt when they go out and play New England, who's a very physical team. We'll come in here a week from now and we'll say, hey, they're going to miss so and so. That's just football. That's the way it is.
It is, but the Patriots are also have some banged up, and their best cornerbacks in concussion protocol right now.
Yep, it's true. Yeah,
so I mean, all these teams, the Bucs aren't the only team to have injuries.
no, not at all.
And I like to flip around sports radio around the country at times, and
Mhm.
the Detroit stations complaining they didn't make moves at the deadline.
Yeah,
Fans are ticked at Brad Holmes, their GM, for not making any moves.
sure.
It's not just in Tampa Bay, and to be honest, there wasn't a ton of moves made at the trade line, although it was the craziest trade deadline in years in the NFL.
Well, there were like 25 players were moved, and that's close to a record, I think, if not the record.
Which I think you get, the baseball trade deadline, so many players are moved, and same with the NBA. The NBA whole rosters get changed over, and in the NHL, there's lots of trades. I mean, the NFL just doesn't do a ton of trades, period, and especially in season. So, this was the craziest one only because the Cowboys decided that giving up first to get lesser defensive linemen instead of keeping Parsons was better. I don't know, but
that's just Jerry, I think, trying to stay relevant. As the Cowboys slip further into the abyss, he's making, I really haven't make these deals and so on and so forth. And now he's got two of the better defensive tackles playing side by side, but is that going to may help you stop the run a little bit? But after what the Cardinals did to them the other day, you're certainly more than one player away. I mean, and to have done what they did in the offseason, you can't really make up for that. I'm not sure they're getting value back for all the first round picks that they collected, but Philadelphia, I think by contrast, what happens is if you're a Bucs fan and you see Philly, right, and they're making moves,
yes,
and you see Seattle, who is a good team because you barely beat them out there in Seattle, which is still their best win, and you see them making moves, and you realize that, you know what, we're gonna have to play these teams, we're gonna have to beat these teams to get to a Super Bowl, and we did nothing. But sometimes, like with Howie Roseman, like they only had 4 sacks all season from all their outside pass rushers. 4. Okay, so sometimes guys are making these deals because their draft picks have not panned out. Period. Right? Like they have free agency and trades and things like that. Sometimes is there to cover your mistakes, not necessarily, hey, they're going for it. Look, they're going for it. And then what are you giving up in return? That's the biggest thing. What's the compensation? Jason Licht loves his draft picks, and the reason is you give up a 5th rounder for a guy that you want to rent for the rest of the season. Great, you lost a talent like Zion McCollum, right? You give up a 3rd rounder. Okay, you've lost a Bucky Irving, right? Like, and so that's sort of what the calculus is for this stuff. And look, is one player going to make all the difference? No, absolutely not. That player is going to come in here, not necessarily know the system, et cetera, et cetera. I thought it meant that they felt pretty good about where their injured players were, but at least as far as this week goes, I don't necessarily think anything's going to be different. Those guys we mentioned, I think are going to be out, but
if you're
mean they're always
expecting
going to be out.
Yeah, if they're expecting those guys back in even say 2 or 3 weeks,
a week or 2, yeah,
that's not we have to go trade for someone to cover that for 2 weeks. Like,
no, not at all, not at all.
I think it does show that they're confident these guys are coming back this season and will be impactful.
I do too.
Maybe not this week, and it looks like outside of Reddick, none of them are coming back.
Right.
But this is the long haul. I mean, it's the other reason that you want to get off to such a good start. And have the record you have is that I'm not saying you have a ton of breathing room. I mean, Carolina's only a game and a half back, but you're not playing catch up. You're not chasing a team at this point.
But you got Carolina twice, and if you had your guys when you play them, you can win the division by beating them twice.
Absolutely.
So no matter what happens these next 3 weeks, one team is an AFC team, and then I think the other 2. 2 of them are AFC teams, exactly. So it doesn't hurt you as bad by losing NFC games. If you lost to Buffalo, if you lost to New England, you'd like to beat the Rams because if it comes to a tiebreaker, home field advantage and things like that would come into play. But the bigger games are the division games that are coming down the way, including 2 in 3 weeks against Carolina, and that may be all you need to win the division. If you beat New Orleans, you may even be able to lose to Atlanta, which I'm not sure they will, but they got to play Atlanta at home. But Atlanta's got a ton of, they got their own issues. They're headed across the ocean to play a tough team. So yeah, you just have to kind of like tread water, hope you don't have any more cataclysmic injuries. The biggest thing is, can you protect the quarterback? And and he is beat up, and he admitted really for the first time, because I asked him about, I mean, this is a guy that through the first 4 weeks, he was winning games as much with his legs, with specific plays. And he's not Michael Vick or anything, but he was, some of his scrambles. And remember the 4th and 10 against the Texans. Remember the 3rd and 14 against San Francisco. Those were, have to have it type drives where he was kind of Houdini a little bit. And, he's got 158 yards. He's, got 7.2 yards per carry. But then you look in the last 2 games, he hasn't had a rushing attempt. Now, that's a twofold reason for that, and Mayfield agreed with me when I asked him about it. One is he's not healthy. He's definitely playing on a bad knee, and the oblique is not a small thing. It also affects his throwing a little bit, he said. But the other thing is that, and it started with Detroit. They got a lot of film out there. I mean, a lot of film out there about what he's been able to do when you get out of your rush lanes. What he's been able to do with his feet and create with his scrambles. And so, starting with Detroit, who spied him, and then a little bit, this past game that they had, I think that teams now are trying to keep those rush lanes closed, and he's also trying to get the ball out of his hands because he doesn't want to get hit. New Orleans didn't really spy as much, but they closed down the rush lanes, and he wasn't able to get out and really do anything. But he had no rushing attempts, none, in these past 2 games, and that's just not what Mayfield has been. In his career, he's never been a scrambler. The guy only has 1,359 yards in 8 seasons, so that's like 169 yards per year. So he's never really been a scrambler per se. But if you need a first down on 3rd down, if you need a guy to move the chains, he's been able to get out of these sacks and do some stuff and throw off balance and all that. And he admitted, he goes, it's kind of 2-pronged. One, it is kind of self-preservation. And the other thing is, they're just not letting me out of here. So I don't think you can count on Baker to get many yards, because he's been really hurting people with that. But by the same token, this is what the NFL is. We're way into the season now. It's beyond the first month. Teams are making adjustments, and I think you'll see the same thing with New England. New England's going to try to keep him hemmed in the pocket. He's going to have to get the ball out, on time. That means that your coverage guys are going to be squatting and be sitting a little bit because they know that he wants to get it out of his hand, and so there has to be an adjustment. And until their offensive line gets better, and they've had 5 different right guards. The last guy being Dan Feeney. I don't know who's going to start Sunday. I mean, Luke Haggard was back at practice, but is he the best of the rest? It remains to be seen. But Baker is clearly not Baker. You know what I mean? And even throwing the ball, he said that injury to his midsection has also affected some of his throws. Not all of them. He's not using them as an excuse, but he said, sometimes, my feet aren't set exactly right. He could get away with it, but now it's a little different. So not to make an excuse, but he said some throws, if I don't have my feet right, they're not going to be accurate. So it was interesting, some sobering, admissions. But I think also a realization by the players, and Baker said he wasn't surprised by this, that the cavalry is not coming. All they have is what they have. And I think for that reason, they're going to have to really lean on their defense. They're going to have to really lean on their defense. And I tell you what, I've not heard more praise for a quarterback out of that locker room than I've heard for them for Drake May. Like, this team really respects Drake May, and they should. And Drake's taken a lot of sacks, but he's made a lot of plays outside the pocket, throwing it down the field. So, it's going to be a real interesting game. I love listening to Vrabel too, man. He's just such a tough guy. They were asking him about not doing deals and like, is this as much about the fact that you guys do any deals about, the future of this team and how you want to see your guys? He goes, look, man, he goes, I'm not into that. We're just trying to win. He says, it's all about winning. Okay. Like we're not trying to set any timetables here for when we win. We're just trying to win. So this will be a fun game, but yeah, not a little bit. I must say, I was a little bit surprised we didn't at least see somebody in practice. I thought maybe Godwin, I thought maybe Bucky, see him out there do something, right? But neither guy's out there yet. So that's the way it is. We got a couple of mailbag questions we'll address here in just a second, some of them about the trade deadline and whatnot. But first, hey, have you been to Breitling Boutique? It's in International Plaza Mall, best mall in Tampa Bay for my money, I think. You go to the center of that second floor. That's where you're going to find the Breitling Boutique. The Breitling Company has been making the best Swiss watches now for over 140 years. They've been in International Plaza Mall for more than 5 years, and you have to experience the customer service. Look, they're used to seeing a lot of professional athletes. I know the Buccaneers go there from time to time. And believe me, they're going to treat you just like the celebrity that you are. Spend some time in that store, man. They're going to pour you a drink and teach you all about the various timepieces that they have. For men, it's the chronomat watches, the Navatimers. Women's, they have sports watches. These are durable, they're gorgeous, and she can choose from just a whole bunch, an array of different colored wristbands to go with that. And while supplies last, if you look in the window, you're likely to see, at least I did recently, a couple of the NFL team watches. That's right, the Breitling Boutique while supplies last, and that's the key. You got to get on it fast. They have been offering 32 different team watches. These are the chronomat watches. They have the team colors as the face of the watch. They got the logo inside. They're absolutely gorgeous and something that is a collector's item for sure. It's Breitling Boutique, International Plaza Mall. Please get down there and let them know that you heard about it right here on Sports Day Tampa Bay. All right, we had a couple of questions or a couple of mailbags we could hit real quick.
All right, well, I'll start with Steve, who asked, is Jason Licht the Dabo Sweeney of the NFL? My picks or no one. Does he have a blind spot in his GM strategy? Can you read into this that he doesn't believe that we're a Super Bowl contender?
I don't think you can read that into it, but he simply, I always say this, that past history is the best predictor of future behavior, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, he had exactly one player that he traded for prior to the deadline. I'm not talking about off-season stuff because we know he did a ton of off-season deals and acquired guys, from Rob Gronkowski on when Tom Brady was here. But as far as the trade, then, and Tom Brady was here when he got Steve McClendon, who was the one player that he traded for because Vita Vea was hurt, defensive tackle. But beyond that, I think it's more of a philosophy than it is an admittance that, we're just not ready. We're just not there yet. Very few NFL teams, this isn't quite like baseball where, you need that closer, that shutdown guy in the ninth inning, or, if I could just get a power bat in the middle of the lineup to drive in runs, or if I could just get a leadoff guy or a shortstop that can, solidify my infield. It's a little different, than that. And I think philosophically he values draft picks, and I think it's for a couple reasons. One is certainly that he likes the idea of drafting and developing players in their system with their coaches, than going and get guys that you're not as familiar with. I mean, they're familiar with all these guys because they do studies on them coming out in the draft, no matter where they go. But you still got to introduce that player to your locker room, and it's a strong locker room. I don't think you're going to get a lot of guys come in here and just not be able to assimilate because you've got some real established leaders on here, Levante David and the Mike Evans and Godwins and guys like that. But I do think that there's no, in the NFL, there's no easy fixes. There's no magic pill that you can take and boom, your team is better. You can get better through trades. It's an avenue, but it's not foolproof and it's not for everybody. And if you brought in somebody, you got to be committed to playing them, right? And so what happens when your players start to get healthy again, when Chris Godwin gets healthy again, when Bucky Irving gets healthy again, Haason Reddick gets healthy again. Do they have areas of need? Yeah. Can you always fill them? No. And the final thing is, it's not to say they didn't try. They may have tried every year, but everybody has a price. My house is not for sale, but if somebody came and offered me, I don't know, $2 million, I would probably pack up the bags tomorrow and go find a place to live. And a lot of times it's that way with players. The guys you want aren't available, or if they are available, they're going to cost you an arm and a leg. And this is not a team for a lot of reasons, and not the least of which is, when you draft a player, you've got them for 4 or maybe 5 years on a rookie deal, and that completely helps your salary cap situation. If you don't think that's a big deal, signing a veteran player that has a big contract or a number of years left, okay, well, what happens when you want to give Baker Mayfield a new 3 or 4 year deal, and instead of $30 million, it's going to cost you 55 or 60? You know what I mean? Like, what about Mike Evans if he comes back and you want to sign him to a 1 year, $22 million deal, and you owe Chris Godwin for 2 more years at 21 million? Like, all those things factor into it. Like, who am I going to lose if I bring in this player? Or am I bringing in a player where I'm giving up 2 draft picks and I don't have him signed for next year? I'm basically renting him, and then I'm going to lose the draft picks on top of that. So, we're not in those discussions. We can't say how close or how far apart they were with anything. We just know they didn't do anything. And it was a very active trade period. But I think what makes it hard for Bucs fans, you see Seattle, you see Philadelphia, and you think, oh, they're going for it. Why aren't we going for it, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, the other part, and this is, people don't like to hear this, and, do I think Jason Licht should have made a move at the deadline? It all depends on what the prices are. But Jason Licht is trying to balance this year with next year and the year after that as well. Like,
yeah,
this isn't the difference between this and Tom Brady was you had a finite window with Tom, 2 years, maybe 3. Like, you knew that.
And you had a real proven commodity with a guy that absolutely knew how to win, get to, and win Super Bowls.
Yep. And a guy that completely changed the culture of this organization.
Yes.
But you knew it was a very finite window.
Exactly.
You have a much wider window, is your hope, with Baker as your quarterback.
Sure.
And then a lot of great young picks that are developing and, and growing and getting better as well. And so, it's not just the cost of going for it this year, but you're trying to keep this window open because, Seattle's going for it and Dallas made moves and other teams made moves. Only one team is going to win at the end of the year.
It's true. One team.
It's not like 10 or 12 of them these win. Like, so it's the cost of it. There's the cost of this year, but it's also what does it cost you next year and the year after? Because Baker's only 30 years old and he's getting better as a quarterback. Like, you expect that window for this team to stay open. If the quarterback's the biggest thing that impacts a Super Bowl window for a team, then you expect this team to this window open for a while. And you've got a lot of good young draft picks recently. We've detailed these. And you've got some cornerstone pieces like Tristan Wirfs and, Mike Evans may be done after this year. We'll see in Levante David, but Vita Vea.
Well, they re-signed Luke
Winfield
Reddick.
Jr.
They extended Kristen Wirfs. They extended Antoine Winfield Jr. There's a lot of core pieces that have gotten extensions.
Yeah, and you like the Morrisons and the Parishes, and
sure,
there's a lot of young talent you like. So this window is it's not like with Tom where you knew you had a year or two. Let's go make it happen, right? And like you said, Tom's the GOAT. You expected that you keep adding pieces and, he's going to figure out how to make it work. And he did. But even those 3 years he was here, you only got 1 Super Bowl out of it.
Yeah, you got 2 phenomenal years out of him, 1 Super Bowl total because they're so hard to win. To your point, I mean, the LA Rams beat them in a walk-off field goal. Or they might have gone back-to-back. They'd have been hosting the 49ers in the championship game. And then he retired, and then 40 days later he unretired, and then it was a disaster. Even that had its expiration date. And so, you went all in, and then you ended up with, $80 million over the salary cap, which is not a fun place to be,
And then the other part is, okay, let's say they wanted to trade for a wide receiver. Don't know they did, but let's say they did. But Chris Godwin's coming back, or assuming. And you've got Ibuka, and maybe McMillan you're expecting back sooner than later. And you still think Mike Evans is going to be back before the end of the regular season or right at the end of the regular season. Well, I mean, giving up some draft picks for that receiver to get you through a couple weeks, is that worth it? I don't know.
Probably not.
Depends on who it is and that, et cetera. But, there's that part of it too is, yes, a lot of those injured guys aren't back this week, it appears, but it doesn't mean in another week or two they're not here. So what holes did you really have that there was someone out there that you thought made your team better? Was there a middle linebacker out there that you think may be better than either the way David or Servassier Dennis is playing right now? And, I don't know if there was and at what cost. Like, there's so much to weigh to it. It's not really just you either go for it or you don't. But Jason Licht's got a pretty good track record of late as a GM. At what point do you put your faith in him that he made the right decision for this franchise? And you're not going to know until a couple of years from now.
Mm-hmm.
How this plays out. That's always the hard part. You can make as many moves you want, but only one team wins at the end of the year. And to be honest, one of the team that made the biggest moves probably isn't going to make the playoffs. The Cowboys.
That's the Dallas Cowboys. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, maybe they can, but
or if you're on the other end of the spectrum, the New York Jets traded away two of their best players.
Yeah. Well, the Jets are in rebuild mode. I mean, that's
true.
That part I get. I mean, now
but that's who gave up guys, right?
Right.
Like, and they got a fortune back. I mean, what the Cowboys gave up was a hell of a lot.
Yeah.
I
mean, the Cowboys are going for it. I mean, they're probably not going to make the playoffs. That was more to save face, I think.
I think that's Jerry trying to still make up for Micah Parsons.
Yeah.
And be relevant. Be like he just wants to be in the news. I mean, they got beat by Arizona and Jacoby Brissett on national TV.
Mm-hmm.
If they win that game, they got a chance to kind of crawl back in it a little bit, and then they lose. So he's got to do something to save face.
Yeah. Now, the Colts are the one that really impressed me as far as going for it.
They did.
Getting Sauce Gardner.
That was huge, and they needed a corner, and that's a team that's, kind of running away with their division and feel like they could be the number one seed. That's the other thing. Like, if you think you're going to be the number one seed, okay, you're talking about a bye week, hosting two games. You win the first one, you're playing in the AFC Championship to go to the Super Bowl. You can almost reach the Super Bowl from where you're standing. So that changes the calculus a little bit too. Although they went out the last time and they got beat, and they gave up some yards, and they have a hole at corner. They needed somebody that can make a difference. I watched, Jacksonville. The one guy I would say, like, Jacoby Myers, went from Vegas to the Jaguars, right? And the Jaguars gave him a 4th and a 6th rounder in 2026. Well, you go, well, I mean, that's not high draft compensation, but a 4th rounder. Go look at who's been drafted in the 4th and 5th round on this team. And so, and you're basically renting Jacoby Meyer. All right. So to your point, maybe Godwin's not back for 2 weeks. Maybe, Mike doesn't come back to the end of the season. What happens when he does? This guy that you just traded 2 draft picks for is now your 4th receiver, and so there's something to that, and the fact that you have gotten some help from some of your younger guys, and you want to see more of that, or, at least reward them for what they're doing as far as, the Johnson & Johnson guys go. But look, it's easy to look in hindsight. The reality is it takes 2 to make a deal. The team that has the player that's being traded, they get to control whether or not they're giving them up for whatever compensation they demand. And if you're not willing to meet it, it could be outrageous, then it's not your fault. It's just you couldn't get together on the compensation part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I can make a million excuses for Jason, but I will tell you that if they go out there and Emeka Egbuka, who by the way they said didn't have any limitations, was completely looked good running, whatever hamstring things he had seems to be behind him now after a week off. If he goes out there and gets hurt, it's going to get dark and gray really fast because Baker's going to run out of targets. He just is, and they're going to have to get Godwin back. They're going to have to get Bucky back here soon for this thing to stay on its wheels. But there's still so much football to play. And I do think that it's a sign that they think these guys are not out for the season, that they're going to get back. They have to be listening to the trainers. They have to know where they're at, and that's a big part of it. So it's going to be interesting. I know fans will scream that they should have done this or that if
Well, here's one that is. We got another email from Tom in Alabama. It says Jason Licht built the 2020 Bucs through a combination of draft, Evans, Vea, Wirfs, Marpet, etc., trades, Gronkowski, JPP, and free agency, Tom Brady, Shaq Barrett, Brown. Seems as if he had simply gravitated towards draft. Seems now he's only gravitated towards draft only. I realize he loves his draft picks, but the Cowboys sent a 7th-round draft pick for Logan Wilson. Would have thought the Bucs should have pulled the trigger on something like that. I think Jason Licht needs to go back to his 2020 model of building a roster. What say you?
Well, I know that Logan Wilson went for a low draft pick, but I don't know that Logan Wilson is that they believe. Okay, it's not what I believe, but that they believe that Logan Wilson's an upgrade from Savasier Dennis. Or
well, let me put it this way: he was benched on the either worst or second worst defense in the NFL. Between the Cowboys and the Bucs, or the Bengals, I mean, Cowboys and the Bengals are the worst defenses. He was benched on there. Now, whether he should have been, I don't know, but he was sitting the bench on that defense that bad. Like, they didn't think he could play enough to help the worst defense in the NFL.
We'll see. Even off of that team where he wasn't starting, he went for a 7th-round pick.
Right. And maybe a change of scenery will help him, and he'll be great there. Who knows?
Maybe he's better than anything the Cowboys have. Which is maybe not the case in Tampa. Look, I'm not a big Savasier. I'm not sold on Savasier Dennis, especially in coverage. They think that the guys that I know, like Larry Foote and others, think that his last 2 games were his best. He still got beat in Detroit on a big play in coverage. But they said overall, those are his 2 most solid games. I'd be willing to wager that next year when we get to the draft, they're going to take an inside linebacker, and should. Because for one, Levante David may retire. And even if he doesn't, he's 35 years old now. What does he have left in the tank? But Dennis has not really established himself in this league as a Pro Bowl talent. So, one of their biggest needs next year will be inside linebacker. Could they have upgraded? I mean, if there was somebody that they thought was better that was worth the draft compensation and that another team would make a deal with them, I think they would have. But, this is what you measure. You're measuring the guy, like you said, on the worst defense in the NFL that couldn't get on the field. And he went for a 7th-round pick. So all he has to do is be better than what the Cowboys were playing with, if there was a market for him, if there were more than one team, more than the Cowboys, then he would have gone for a higher draft pick. So, even though you see a guy at that position in their evaluation, the Bucs evaluation, their player is better, right? Their player is better. They drafted him in the 3rd or 4th round. He missed a year of football. That's the other thing. He missed a year of football. I will say this about the defense. After watching what they did to New Orleans, and yes, I know it's New Orleans and they played 2 quarterbacks and New Orleans is bad and all that. But after watching what they did, what Antoine Winfield did, what Anthony Nelson was able to do, and the turnovers and creating field position and that sort of thing, seeing the kind of year Jamel Dean is having, Zion McCallum, seeing Tyke Smith and Jacob Parrish and the way he's playing now. You're now 7-8 games down the road. These guys have a better feel for this defense and what to do inside of this defense. Even like Elijah Roberts and guys like that have come on and become factor players. They're starting to hum a little bit, and that's what they need to do. It's a complementary game. When your offense is down a little bit, the defense needs to pick them up. When the defense is down, the offense needs to pick them up. And I think this defense has been as chaotic as one that Bowles has had for a while. They're tied for 5th in sacks. They're getting turnovers now. They scored a defensive touchdown. Could have scored 3 against the Saints. Winfield for the first time, I think, in a year, looked like Antoine Winfield Jr. He looked like that guy that's disruptive, that makes play after play, that's going to get turnovers, score with the ball. You continue to get that kind of performance. They'll be able to withstand this because it's a team game. And if I were a Bucs fan, I think what I'd be banking on is that defense, not the offense so much. Maybe they're not going to score 30, but it doesn't mean the defense can't score, get field position, and all those things. So it's a team game, and I think they see those guys getting better on that side too. But yeah, this guy that I really had him focused on and he wasn't starting for the Bengals, I don't know that he puts the Bucks over the top either. I mean, they got Deion Jones to back up Servatier if they need him. Deion Jones has made Pro Bowls in this league. So, good question, though. I mean, I get why people feel that way.
All right, we'll wrap up on this one today. Michael had tweeted, the Dodgers have bought the best dynasty money can buy. Is their approach good or bad for the game of baseball? It feels like everyone else is playing for second place.
Well, I think on a macro that, your high revenue teams, and you could throw Toronto in there too, because they were like fifth, I think, in payroll, have a much better chance to win a World Series. They just do. Does that mean it's guaranteed? No. It's funny. I was listening to Dave Roberts. He was on with Dan Patrick, and Patrick asked him a question about like, hey, is it harder when you're the team that everyone expects to go to the World Series? And Roberts is like, we don't think that way. Like, we go to the ballpark every day trying to win a game. It's 162 games. It's a long season. They played till November 3rd or 2nd or whatever it was. And he's like, you don't think about that. You just, it's 25 guys at a time, going out there and just trying to win games and grind through it and get to the postseason. And, it's remarkable performances. And yeah, they had the biggest payroll and they certainly had, the best players with Ohtani and, some of those other guys. But like, it's still hard to do, right? It's been 25 years since the team went back to back. It doesn't, I guess what I'm saying is if it guaranteed you a pennant, then the Yankees will win every year or the Dodgers will win every single year. Now, you're starting to see a lot of big payroll teams win the World Series, and certainly the Dodgers have done it 2 years in a row. And I think baseball does need to address the issue. I just don't know how they do it with a players' union that's not going to agree to a salary cap. They're not. And the luxury tax means little to the Dodgers either. It's, $500 million a year with penalties. They don't care. But another point I heard that was made that I thought was a good one. I think it was Bryce Harper said, well, money aside, and of course money is the big determiner with a lot of these things. But he goes, who wouldn't want to play in Los Angeles? Who wouldn't want to play for a storied franchise? He goes, they offer things in LA that you can't get in many of these major league cities. You're not. It's not like playing in Pittsburgh, man. Like if you have a choice and you get an opportunity to play for the Dodgers, aren't you going to go play for the Dodgers? A lot of guys would. I mean, Shohei Ohtani was great and a generational talent, and Babe Ruth, but he played for a Los Angeles team. It just happened to be the Angels, right? It wasn't the brand that the Dodgers were. Didn't have the even though he was playing with arguably the second best player in baseball, Mike Trout. They didn't win squadouche, But then he goes to L.A. or to the Dodgers, and then things happen for him. But yeah, there's a part of me that's like mad at baseball that they're in this mess. That if you're a Rays fan, you feel like, well, there's no way they're ever going to be able to compete with these guys. And yet the Rays did make it to a couple World Series. And if Blake Snell doesn't come out of the game, maybe they win one. I mean, look how close this game was, and this series was. It was an eyelash of going the other way. But no question. I mean, baseball has to figure this out, and I don't have the answers for them. I just don't know, short of a salary cap, exactly what you're going to do to even the playing field, unless, as others in Romano had suggested, John Romano, that maybe you look at the divisions, and maybe not put a low budget team like the Rays in with the Yankees, Red Sox, and Blue Jays. All right, the Tampa Bay Lightning continue their westward ho trip. They got a game tonight. Where are they at, Steve?
Late night in Vegas, 10 o'clock puck drop. So
Las Vegas, baby. Yeah, yep. That'll be a good
one. 1-1 on the road trip so far. Their 5-game win streak snapped on Tuesday night in Colorado, who may be the best team in the NHL.
Is that right?
They have one regulation loss this year.
Holy cow! I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, that's a really good team on the road in Colorado. Lightning lost 3-2. Took a bad too many men on the ice penalty that led to the first goal. Victor Hedman had a turnover, led to the second goal, and then Max Crozier kind of got caught flat-footed on the third goal. But so they lost 3-2, but they didn't play poorly. Some mistakes all cost them.
But that's what good teams do, right? You make a mistake, it ends up in the back of your net.
A loss on the road at Colorado is not a bad loss.
Right.
And
right.
look, if you win 5 in a row and lose one, I'll take that all day long.
Yeah, you think?
No, you need to start it up again tonight.
Right.
You're in Vegas, then you're home Saturday night, a quick turnaround home Saturday night to face the Capitals. Alex Ovechkin, who got goal number 900 tonight.
Incredible. Yeah. And those that first game off a road trip can be difficult too, I'm told.
Particularly coming back from the West Coast, but
yeah.
So the Lightning will actually stay tonight in Vegas. They'll fly back Friday morning.
Okay.
To Tampa. So they're not going to make the long journey overnight and get back at 5, 6 a.m.
They play Friday or Saturday?
They play Saturday.
Saturday. Okay. Yeah, so they'll have a day at home.
Yeah, they'll fly back Friday. So, I mean, but I think they, 9 or 10 o'clock Vegas time, which is noon or 1 here, and then you're flying back. You're not getting home till evening. So,
yeah. Yeah, you could wear those guys out going overnight.
But yeah, you're not doing the overnight trip. So,
yeah, those suck. I can tell you for a fact. And the Bucs have that coming up because they got a Sunday night game in Los Angeles, which is probably the worst place you can play if you're an East Coast team. On a Sunday night, get back home about 4 or 5 in the morning, 3 or 4 in the morning. It's not good.
Nope.
Long trip. So
anyway, by the time you get home, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure. We'll have a chance to talk to Josh Grizzard today, the Bucs offensive coordinator. Another open locker room. Find out if there's any improvement in some of the injuries and things like that as the Bucs continue their preparations for the New England Patriots. Get on down to Breitling Boutique, International Plaza Mall. Check out the NFL team watches, 32 of them while supplies last. It's Breitling Boutique. Let them know that you heard about it, please, right here on Sports Day Tampa Bay. Thanks for listening. As always, for Steve Versnick, I'm Rick Stroud of the Tampa Bay Times. Have a great day, everybody.